Hey guys, I'm Angie Designs and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how I am making my drawers and chemise for my Snow White cosplay. A few weeks back you might have seen that I made my corset, and now it's time for the other undergarments because of course I'm not just going to wear the corset, I need to have the other garments. So I am going to be using the pattern by Truly Victorian, TV 106. These patterns were forwarded to me by my friend Crimson Needle over on Instagram, and you should definitely go check out her work because her historical inspired and historically accurate work is absolutely amazing, and I believe she used these on her historically accurate version of Alice in Wonderland, which is amazing. But she forwarded me these patterns because I realized that these would be the best ones in combination with the other pieces I'm planning on making. Now, this video is by no means a tutorial, and if you're hoping I'm making this historically accurately, unfortunately I am not. But I did want the silhouettes to be historically accurate so that in combined with some of the other aspects of the silhouette, it would still kind of work together. The way I'm decorating my chemise and drawers is not historically accurate, but you can call it historically inspired, just like the rest of the costume is, because Snow White's costume is by no means historically accurate anyway, but you can tell it is inspired by history. So I'm kind of going for the same effect. So you'll be seeing me use ribbons and tucks, and they might not be the most historically accurate methods or ways, but that's just how I'm doing it because that's how I want to do it. And I want to decorate them, make them a little bit fancy and stuff, because, you know, that's just fun. So let's get to the construction. And welcome to the voiceover. For the larger pieces on this pattern, I decided to use my pattern weights in order to weigh everything down instead of pinning. That's just something I prefer doing. It's not like a technical thing, it's just a preference of mine personally. And then for the smaller pieces, like the yokes, I decided to use my pins because, well, the pattern weights wouldn't exactly fit on them. The first step, interestingly enough, is to actually hem. In this case, you hem the little sleeves that hang off the little shoulder there, and then you just hem them with a normal rolled up hem, and afterwards attach it right to the garment with a French seam. I was very surprised that these were the first steps, but that was how the instructions said to do it, so I followed along. Once my sleeves are beautifully French seamed and pressed to the chemise front, it's time to actually gather where the yoke will go, because there's actually a lot of volume that goes into that tiny yoke on the top of the chest. So 2 rows of basting stitches, which then I hand gathered into desired size, which is of course the size of the yoke, and controlling the gathers as I went. I quite enjoy gathering, it's quite relaxing to me, and yeah, it's really fun. And then it was on to the yoke. The first step of the yoke is actually to press up what will initially be the seam allowance on the inside layer, so the lining side of the yoke, and then you just attach that to the outside layer of the yoke. Pretty straightforward sewing and a lot of clipping and notching later on, but yeah, you just simply put those 2 pieces together with the hem or the seam allowance already pressed up. Again, these are methods I'm not particularly used to, but it made sense after I started doing everything. Instruction-wise, it didn't make sense to me very much at first. Okay, so before I continue working on the chemise and putting the yoke into the chemise and onto the gathers, I've decided to put on a little bit of details. I figured maybe it'd be really cute to put some of that lace that I had put on the corset also on here, or just kind of top stitch it on there. I don't know what the historical methods are for doing this, so I'm just doing it now and top stitching it now that I have this part of the yoke finished. And I'm thinking I might take some of this ribbon here and put it on top. Not sure yet, we'll see how I feel once I actually get it all top stitched on there, but I might do that. It looks kind of good. So top stitching I did. First I top stitched on the lace as I explained just before, and yeah, that went on pretty simply. Just top stitch in the little grooves that are on the lace, and you can hardly tell there's even stitching there, so it looks pretty good. And I also did decide to put on some of the blue as well, the little blue ribbon. I decided to kind of added a little something and tied it into the corset really nicely as well, which I'll talk about a bit later, but that just was the same thing. I top stitched it on both sides. The top and the bottom of the ribbon were top stitched into place. Once my yoke was adorably adorned with ribbons and lace, it was time to actually attach it to the chemise front. That was a matter of putting the gathers into that little V shape that the yoke makes. It took a little finagling because there's actually a lot of volume there, but it ends up looking really, really nice. And to finish it off, remember that little bit that I had pressed up the seam allowance there? It was a matter of lining that up with the gathered seam and then slip stitching everything down. Slip stitching things are sometimes my favorite steps, and I quite enjoyed it on this one. I didn't want to top stitch it like it had suggested, because it suggested either hand stitching it or machine stitching it, but I felt like this would just kind of make it look a little nicer, a little cleaner, and I don't know, just I enjoy slip stitching a lot. It's just really relaxing. Now, technically at this point, the front of the chemise would be done, except I wasn't done with the decorating. I figured at this point it'd be the easiest point to actually put in some tucks, pleats, or other decorations. So I decided to do some pin tucks, which you see me marking right here. I just did some parallel lines, and they're only a 1/4 inch thick while finished. So you see me measuring 1/2 inch lines here. I also decided to put in some lace and some ribbon, which you'll see me talk about in a little bit, but this is just me measuring out the distances between the different pieces and then putting in the pin tucks with my machine. You can see that I just kind of fold over the edges and then stitch down. They're pretty simple, and they end up looking really, really clever and really, really nice, and I really enjoy putting pin tucks in. They're quite relaxing. I think that's a little theme of this whole project, was very enjoyable and kind of relaxing to do because it wasn't stressful sewing, which is really, really nice. Not that sewing is ever stressful. Sewing's never stressful. Okay, so I now have all the pin tucks in place, so it's time to start adding in some more detail. I'm going to be using that same lace from before and just kind of putting it like this, I think, right here. I think it fills up that space quite nicely, and I think I'm going to put just a little blue ribbon maybe up here like this, or like that. I'm not quite sure yet, but I feel like right there might look really nice. Or it's just interesting because it kind of like looks almost the same size as my pin tucks. But yeah, I think it's coming along really nicely. I think that'll make it look really, really cute. I feel like the pin tucks in like comparison to the size of the lace looks really, really good too, especially with this size of ribbon as well. So I'm really liking how it's looking. Let's be looking how it look this way. So yeah. So just like I did on the yoke, I then top stitched on the lace onto the area I wanted in between the two sections of pin tucking. Like before, I top stitched that little, in between that little groove at the very top of the lace, and it goes on pretty swimmingly because it's a very straight seam here, a very straight area. And then I also decided, as I mentioned before, to actually put the blue ribbon on just above the other pin tucks instead of kind of disguising it as another pin tuck. This was just a little easier to do consistently, and also I just found because it was a different color and it was a ribbon as opposed to a tuck, it ended up looking really nice. I really like this placement, and it might not be everyone's preference, but I like it. I guess that's what matters, right? It is my underwear after all. Last night I went and finished the back side, which I didn't film because it's literally just a repeat of what I did to the front with the yoke and everything. The shapes are just slightly different, so there's the front and there's the back. So literally basically the same process, so I didn't film it because it'd just be a repeat of the same exact thing over again. But everything's done, so now it's a matter of just putting them both together, which is just a matter of front seaming the side seams and then hemming the whole thing. I think those are the next steps at least. And then I just gotta put some buttons. Oh, hello. And then just put some buttons at the shoulder to put it all together. So yeah, I'm going to be finishing this piece today at least, and likely going to get to start on the drawers as well. And there's a mouthy little cat. So onto the French seaming of the side seams, which goes all the way from the underarm point, lining that up and the sleeve, and all the way down to the hem. So to do this, you put together your wrong sides together as opposed to right sides together as you would with just a flat seam. Then you trim down the seam allowance, press it all nice and crisp, and then you just flip it over, and then you have a right side to right side, and it creates a nice enclosed seam. I would prefer to do it this way as opposed to, say, serging it for something like this, just because it kind of gives it, the right look, the right feel, and French seams are really satisfying to do. I don't know if it's everyone's jam, but I quite enjoy a good French seam. And then it's just a matter of hemming. Like I said, I didn't really want to use my serger. I could have just done a rolled hem or a serged hem here, but I wanted to do it the proper way, and it just looked so good next to those pin tucks. Flip up the hem, press it, and top stitch it all into place. So the chemise is now done now that I have finished the hem. I've decided not to put lace on it or anything, and I've also decided to not put lace on the sleeves like I was originally thinking, mostly because I realized that this would be close to like my armpit, and it's an underlayer, so I don't think it's really required, and it'll just be uncomfortable anyway, and it won't be seen, so that combination is just, you know, not the greatest. But yeah, the whole piece is finished. It's super cute. I guess that means I'm off to do the drawers next. This is honestly such a nice pattern to make. It's just quite simple, has a nice sewing in it, really easy to put a little bit of fun detail, even though it's stuff that will never be seen, but it's pretty easy to put in there. And yeah, it's nice to actually have an underlayer for one of my costumes, because I don't often make all the undergarments for all of them. And so it was on to the next undergarment. As you can see, King is being very helpful, but also very distracting here. But can we just appreciate how he's sitting off to the side and not directly on the pattern? Or, you know, maybe I spoke a little too soon. He started to sit in the way right as I say that, of course. But he wasn't directly in the way the whole time and not playing up my pattern weights for once. And then it was a matter of doing the same thing that I did on the bottom hem at the end of the chemise and putting the pin tucks on the bottom of the drawer hem. This was actually something you're supposed to do at the very beginning, because then you're sewing all your seams and such right after. It was the initial first step, is to get each pant leg done. So, details first, and just like on the chemise, I decided to put a little ribbon. The lace ended up going on the hem afterwards. And just like on the side seams of the chemise, French seaming the inseams of the little pants of the drawers. And yeah, just like before, satisfying to do, really quick, and ends up looking really, really nice. I really love a good French seam. And then it was time to hem both pants, just like the chemise before as well. Folding it up, pressing it down, and top stitching it down into place. I find it interesting when hemming is so early on in a project like this, because I'm so used to hemming being like the last step in projects, or even in pattern instructions. And also in this case, I also got to use my clips again. It was a good opportunity to do it instead of stabbing myself with the pins, otherwise that hand you see there, my left hand, would have been full of pinpricks. So now I have the ribbon attached as well as the lace at the bottom and my little pin tucks over here, and the entire hem is done. So that's nice. And now I can go and apply the bias tape to the inside of the crotch area, because again, these are Victorian style drawers, so they are technically open there. So I don't sew them together as you normally would with a pair of pants. So I'm going to apply the bias tape, which will then be a bias facing, which I will likely hand sew into place, I think, probably. But first, machine sew the bias tape to the opening of the pant. So in my footage, I skip ahead a little bit, but this is the better footage anyway, because of course it includes little Kingy just being adorable. But at this point, I had the bias that I made for the facing all sewn in by machine, pressed, and it was time to just hand stitch it into place. As mentioned before, I love to do a good slip stitch. In this case though, it's more like a whip stitch, since it is something that will be directly on my front and under many layers. I figured it wouldn't be seen, so it didn't matter if I didn't do a completely super clean, hardly visible slip stitch. So it was more of a whip stitch, but I did make sure that you only saw teeny tiny little pricks on the outside of the garment. So if you are ever to see these, hopefully not on me, because that would be a little strange considering their placement, but if you were to ever see these in person, you'd only see teeny tiny little stitches on the outside of the garment, which is the goal here. I really like doing that a lot, and now just enjoy King being adorable. I now have the facings hand stitched into each piece of the legs. And it went in pretty cleanly, pretty quickly, and it was quite nice to put in. So now I have to make the waistband to attach and gather this all into to make these drawers. The waistband's currently in a few pieces right now, so I just gotta start putting those together so I can put them onto here. And the cat's yelling again, what a shock. And so I turned all those little waistband pieces into one piece. You can see me here attaching the two different layers, the lining side and the outside together. I did skip past all the little seam allowances because there's a lot of little side seams on these particular little drawers. But same thing like the yoke, I did fold up some of the seam allowance on the lining side so I could stitch it down later. Again, we love some good slip stitching. And then it was time to put that waistband onto the actual drawers. Same thing with the yoke on the chemise. You gather it in and just put it in there nice and flat. Now, the gathers on the drawers are a lot more gathered than they are on the chemise. So as you can see, it's a lot thicker. There's a lot more volume here. And then I just attach that right into that waistband, that little flat waistband. Here you can really see how well that flat waistband goes into that nice gathered drawer area. I don't know what else to call that seam, but it goes really nice, and there's some really nice gathers and volume happening right there. And here you can see I'm just pressing everything using my hand because there's a little bit of roundness there, and just keeping everything nice and clean. And then, like before, slip stitch everything down nice and clean. I love me a good slip stitch, and I got to do it a lot for this project, which was really nice sometimes to come home from work and just slip stitch. It was quite relaxing and a nice way to finish off this project. So with that, my pieces are all done, both the chemise and the drawers. So let's take a look at these pieces. As you can see, it's very helpful that these drawers happen to fit on my mannequin because they are open at the bottom. Wow. But yes, I can fit the drawers on my mannequin because they are open at the bottom. I'm really happy with how these turned out. I'll insert some shots here to show you the full thing of the drawers. On me, they fit quite well, and I'm quite pleased with them. And I really like how they look in combination with the chemise. The chemise also fits me quite well, and I will show you a full look of the chemise and the drawers together, and eventually I will show you a piece of all the pieces with the corset also combined on me as well. Now is not that time. I want to do a little undergarment reveal once all the undergarments are finished. In the end, I'm pretty pleased with how the construction of both pieces went, and I really liked how they ended up using pieces that matched my corset that I made before, which made me really happy, and I like how they look as a combination and like a combined little mini outfit under an outfit, which makes me really happy. All in all, I'm really happy with how these turned out. Thank you again so much to Crimson Needle for forwarding me your copy of the patterns. That really helped me out a lot, and these are really just enjoyable to put together. They're simple garments, but it's just kind of nice sometimes when I came home from work just to pluck away at simpler sewing, and it was really quite relaxing, and I really enjoyed making them. If you liked this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and be sure to check out my Instagram account as I post my updates and work in progresses as I go over there. If you want to see what I'm currently working on and not wait for the videos to come out, you can get a little sneak peek and a little work in progress over there as well in my stories and highlights. Up next will be the hoop skirt. I cannot tell you when that video will be out as it is currently not in progress, and I need to do that next. That is the next piece to work on for this costume, so you can look forward to that at some point on this channel. So be sure to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and I shall see you guys in the next video. See you guys later!